It was Christmas Day, a day of warmth and family gatherings. But far from the festive lights, on a frozen airfield in the heart of World War II, the crew of a B-17 bomber prepared for a mission. As they climbed into the biting cold of their aircraft, the young men had no idea this would become the longest, most harrowing day of their lives. For them, this Christmas would not be about celebration, but about survival. Their mission was one of many that day, part of the relentless air war over Europe. They were just one bomber in a massive formation, a single piece in a grand, violent chess game. The crew, barely out of their teens, were bound together by a shared sense of duty and the fragile trust that kept them alive at 25,000 feet. Their bomber, nicknamed Stardust, was a fortress in the sky, but they all knew how quickly that fortress could become a tomb. As the bomber lifted off before dawn, its 4 engines roared, protesting against the bitter winter air. Below them, England was a patchwork of darkened towns and fields dusted with snow. Ahead, across the Channel, lay occupied Europe, a continent shrouded in the darkness of war and endless snow clouds. The target was deep inside enemy territory, a heavily defended industrial site. The briefing had been clear: expect heavy resistance. But there was also a shared, unspoken hope of belief that they would complete their mission and be back in time for a late Christmas dinner, back to the relative safety of their base. They exchanged nervous jokes, checked their oxygen masks, and settled in for the long flight. The mood was tense, a mix of adrenaline and the quiet fear that was every crewman's constant companion. They flew on, climbing higher into the frozen expanse, believing they would be home by nightfall. They were wrong. The war had other plans for their Christmas. The journey across the English Channel was uneventful, a deceptive calm before the storm. As they crossed the enemy coastline, the vast formation of bombers tightened up for mutual protection. The sky, once empty, began to fill with the dark puffs of flak anti-aircraft fire exploding around them, rocking the plane with violent concussions. Shrapnel pinged against the aluminum skin of the Stardust like deadly hail. Inside, the gunners scanned the sky, their eyes straining to spot the first signs of enemy fighters. And then they came. Swarms of Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs tore through the bomber formation, their cannons blazing. The sky erupted into a chaotic ballet of tracers, smoke, and falling aircraft. The air inside the Stardust filled with the thunder of its own. 50 caliber machine guns, the gunners shouting coordinates and warnings over the intercom. It was a maelstrom of noise and violence. Suddenly, a deafening explosion ripped through the right side of the aircraft. A flak shell had its mark. The plane shuddered violently, and the No. 3 engine erupted in flames. A wave of acrid smoke filled the cockpit. The pilot and co-pilot fought to control the crippled bomber as it began to lose altitude, falling away from the protective embrace of the formation. Warning lights flashed across the instrument panel, a symphony of failure. The intercom crackled with damage reports, hydraulic lines severed, the radio gone, the fire spreading along the wing. They were alone. The rest of the bomber stream moved on, a distant silver river in the sky, leaving the Stardust to its fate. Below them was a hostile, snow-covered landscape, an endless white blanket stretching to the horizon. Above them, only the vast, indifferent cold of the winter sky. The familiar roar of the formation faded, replaced by the terrifying sound of their own sputtering engines and the wind whistling through the new holes in their fuselage. Their Christmas mission had just turned into a desperate fight for survival. The crew worked with a silent, desperate efficiency. Every man knew his job. Every action was instinctive. The pilot wrestled with the controls, trying to keep the heavy bomber level. The co-pilot worked to feather the propeller on the dead engine and activate the fire extinguishers. But the flames on the wing stubbornly refused to die. In the back, the waist gunners jettisoned ammunition and equipment, anything to lighten the load and slow their descent. The navigator, his charts now almost useless, tried to get a fix on their position, hoping to find a friendly line or at least avoid a heavily populated area. But every dial on the instrument panel told a story of impending doom. The fuel gauges were dropping at an alarming rate. The fire on the wing was growing, threatening to reach the main fuel tanks. The pilot's voice, calm but strained, came over the intercom, giving the order they all dreaded but expected: prepare to bail out. There was no panic, only a grim acceptance. One by one, the crew made their way to the escape hatches. A final glance at each other, a nod, a shouted, "Good luck," and then they were gone, disappearing into the freezing wind, their parachutes blossoming like pale flowers against the gray sky. The pilot stayed at the controls, holding the Stardust steady for as long as he could to give his crew the best chance of getting out. Finally, as the fire reached the cockpit, he too bailed out, the last man to leave the dying bomber. He watched as the Stardust, their home in the sky, spiraled down and disappeared into the snow clouds below. Christmas had become a brutal test of individual will against the unforgiving elements of a war-torn winter. Against all odds, some of the crew would survive that day. They landed scattered across the frozen German countryside. Some were captured immediately, spending the rest of the war in a POW camp. Others managed to evade capture for a time, aided by brave members of the resistance, before eventually being caught. A few would not survive the jump or the harsh conditions on the ground. For those who made it home after the war, Christmas would never be the same. It was a day forever marked by the memory of fire in the sky, the biting cold, the faces of their lost comrades. It was the day history had singled them out. Their story, like countless others from that time, is a stark reminder of the immense personal cost of the war. It's a testament to the courage and resilience of a generation that faced unimaginable horrors. The wreckage of the Stardust was eventually found, years later, its metal bones a silent monument in a quiet German forest. The crew's sacrifice, once just a line in a mission report, became a story of human endurance. For them, Christmas Day was no longer a holiday, it was a turning point. The day their lives were irrevocably changed, the day they became part of a history we must never forget. And that is why these stories from World War II still hold such power. Because behind every mission number, every faded photograph, and every official report, there were real people. Young men with hopes and fears, who were asked to do the impossible in the face of overwhelming odds. Their experiences are not just history. They are profound human stories that continue to teach us about courage, sacrifice, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more true stories that bring history to life, make sure you subscribe to Civic Mind Facts. We'll see you in the next one.